Last year, Stellantis took a 21% stake in Leapmotor and set up a joint venture to sell their cars in Europe, deciding clearly, if you can't beat them, you might as well sell them. 2 of their cars are coming to Europe. This is one of them. This is inside China Auto, and this is the Leapmotor C10. Yes, this is the Leapmotor C10, the latest car from Leapmotor and the smaller brother of the almost identically styled Leapmotor C16. If you think it looks quite similar to a Li Auto, particularly with this paint colour and that interior colour, you'd be right. I'd say they're fairly similar. This one is probably a little bit less dynamically styled than that. It looks a little bit bulbous, I would say, at the front end. Quite a lot of overhang here as well. But anyway, this car is available as an EV and as an extended range electric vehicle. Outside of China, I think you're probably only going to get it in EV only form. That means in Europe, Australia, and I believe even India as well. So under here, we do not have a frunk in our version because we've got the extended range electric version. Under here, you get a 1.5 litre engine. That charges your battery and the battery powers the wheels. That's what an extended range electric vehicle is. Whether you get a frunk in the electric version, not entirely sure. I will have to check that out for you. But as you can see, fairly neatly styled, quite simple actually. This car, even though it's not to my taste exactly, doesn't really matter because it's won quite a few design awards from several different design organisations. You've got these angel wing headlamps across the front here. You've got quite an abrupt drop down there for this kind of air intake that goes around the wheels here. At the side, we've got the optional 20-inch alloys. And I'm going to be honest with you, these are the biggest wheels you can get. And it still looks a little bit under-wheeled, if I'm totally honest with you. I mean, the height between here and here is quite a lot. It feels like the wheels are a little bit small. And these are the biggest ones. The standard versions are 18-inch. So I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look with the 18-inch wheels. But check out the turning angle. This car has a cracking turning radius, which I'll come on to in the driving section later on. Elsewhere, it is, as I said, quite rounded. You'll notice up here, by the way, we have a LiDAR unit. That means that we have the top edition of this car, which comes with the intelligent driving package. It does not do urban autonomous driving. It just does highway and city elevated highway kind of driving. But you still get a bunch of cameras on here for 360-degree vision. You get kind of fairly simplified styling, I would say, quite smooth and sort of subtle. You get pop-out door handles like that. You get blacked out rims around the window as well. Overall, I'd say it's quite a neat car. Proportions do feel maybe a little bit high, especially around the front with that kind of big bulby nose on it. But overall, it's not that bad. Notice, by the way, we've got our fuel port on this side. The electronic charging port is on the other. If you get the EV only version, I suspect you only get the one side. Now at the back, this car gets quite a bit more neat than it is at the front, I would say. Quite good proportions here. You get twin LED light bars across the back here. One there, of course, is your daytime running light. The bottom ones are your indicators, reversing lights down there. And you get Leapmotor spaced out in text across the back there. You also get a big spoiler, which conceals a rear window wiper under there. And on the top couple of versions of this car, you get an electronic tailgate as well. Now, Leapmotor say that there's only 370 litres of space in here. I genuinely think there's more than that. I mean, there's cars that I've been in recently that have claimed more, that look a lot smaller than this. I think there's more than 370 litres in there, but it's a very usable space, this, very square, very flat, so there's no kind of bits and crannies to get your wheels and your pram stuck in, things like that. Good height as well if you want to do nappy changes in the back of here. Bear in mind, this is very much a family car. That's a theme we're going to come on to during the video. There's a bit more space at the bottom there and a speaker. You can fold down the rear seats 40-60 on this as well to get up to 825 litres of space. There's a little tiny bit of space under there for other gubbins as well. So yeah, I mean, overall, not a great deal to write home about in terms of the overall design of this car. I think it looks fairly neat, fairly inoffensive, and for most people, that will absolutely be enough. So as I just mentioned, the C10 is very much focused on family, and a couple of features in here, in the front and in the back, that are designed to make life a little bit easier for parents like myself. The first of which is this optional silicone leather upholstery on the seats. So normal versions of the car come with a fabric, which I believe is called Cortex. This is optional, and it's Ercotech certified to make sure that it doesn't cause rashes on your children's sensitive skin. which is very nice. And I have to say, it is super soft as well. It feels really, really nice. As do, by the way, these front seats, which are some of the best seats that I've sat in all the cars that we've driven. Really long base cushion, so you don't need base cushion extension. The driving position is very good. And you'll notice here, the side bolster comes all the way up to the top by your shoulders. So your whole torso is held in place while you're driving. It feels like you're being hugged. These chairs are super soft and squishy. Actually quite similar to old French cars. So maybe you should take these seats and put them in a Citroën or a Peugeot, for example, if Stellantis want to do so. Elsewhere, though, it's fair to say the interior is uninspired, maybe, or alternatively, inspired by Tesla. So it is very minimalist in here. You've got your 10.25-inch screen for your driving functions in front, 14.6-inch screen in the middle, and pretty much nothing else. There are no switches, just your window switches, your seat switches, you've got your wipers up there, and your drive selector there, and a couple of buttons that'll roll the wheels on your steering wheel. That is it. Everything else goes into this main system here. And I don't know if you've noticed, by the way, but this interior is very tan. By the way, you can also get this car in purple on the interior as well, but it is super tan. Everything is the same color in here. So even this strip under the ambient lighting, which looks like it's brushed, like a brushed metal, no, that's also tan. The wireless charger is tan. The cup holders are tan. The grate on the speakers is tan. So it feels very brown. Feels very brown indeed. It could be broken up with a couple of extra materials, but this car is very affordable. So there's not really the necessity to go overboard with extra materials. What I can say is it does feel very, very well put together. I mean, it's really, really solidly screwed together. The handles on the door, nothing moves as it shouldn't do. And it's all covered in soft material. So the top surfaces here, around here, all across the dashboard and the top up there, top of the doors as well. Everything is lovely and soft. You just get your plastics down at the bottom. So it does feel quite premium at the same time. But other than that, not really much else to talk about. You get a 12-speaker sound system in the car, which is a 7.1 surround sound system. So decent sound system, not the greatest in the world. It will do the job though for your TV, your films and your music in there. The car is not exactly the loudest place in the world. You get your ambient lighting under here and under the doors. That is an option on all versions of the car. You get heated and ventilated front seats. Again, an option on all versions of the car. We get a 2.1 square meter panoramic roof with an electronic sunblind, which you control here. That is only on the top couple of versions of the car, so the base version doesn't get the big panoramic roof. Good that we have the electronic sunblind as well, by the way. That's very good for your kids. I do have a couple of gripes with this car. The wireless charger is utterly useless. 15 watt, not ventilated. My phone went up from 10% to 14% in half an hour yesterday. So useless wireless charger. Cup holders, a little bit small as well. They're a bit tighter at the bottom than at the top. So sometimes your cup doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the cup holder. You do get USB-A and USB-C sockets down here. Weirdly, you only get the 60 watt USB-C socket on the top version of the car. Otherwise, it's a 15 watt USB-C socket. You get decent storage in the doors, a bit of space under there, deep pocket in the middle here, and a reasonably sized glove box. And then we get on to the system. This is a 14.6 inch 2.5K screen with a lovely dynamic background on it there. You get the 8155 Snapdragon chip on the lower versions of the car, the latest 8295P Snapdragon chip on the top versions of the car. And it runs the Leap OS operating system, which is the latest operating system, which I believe may make it into some future Stellantis cars as well. I'm not sure. But you get your ventilation across the bottom there. You get your ventilation speed across the bottom there. You get adjustable widgets, which you can swap out for apps or other useful things like max air conditioning down the bottom corner here. And you get a frequently used box, which you can adjust as well for apps that you want to see more often. And you can adjust the source of your music very quickly from the front page. So all very nice in there, and you get your maps, of course, as well. We also get a 360-degree camera, so you can do 3D transparent chassis, so the beautiful view in the background there. So all good in the system, very slick, looks really nice, much nicer than a BYD system. This is very, very good. We also get a 4G SIM card on the low versions of the car. You get a 5G SIM card on the more expensive versions of the car. Steering wheel heating is optional, as is a PM2.5 sensor and air quality system in there as well, if you want to keep the air nice and clean in the car. And in terms of safety, on the higher end versions of the car, you get front airbags, side airbags and curtain airbags. The lower versions of the car make do without the curtain airbags. But I suspect when it comes to Europe, you're going to get the curtain airbags on all versions of the car. That's just a guess, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of spec for a very inexpensive car. Just like in the front seat of the C10, the back seats are absolutely wonderful. Big long base cushions for full thigh support. You get a recess in the rear cushion here, so you feel nice and cushioned as well. You can also adjust the backrest angle from 27 to 35 degrees if you want to lay back a little bit more. And there's just bags of space, loads of footroom down there, loads of knee room down here, loads of headroom up here. It's super spacious, super comfy. It's fairly practical as well. Big door pockets here. You get pockets on the back of the seats. You get 2 cup holders at the front there, vents, USB-C and USB-A sockets down there. As I said, loads of space. These front 2 seats, if you take the headrests out, they'll fold all the way flat. So you can basically sit in here like a massive sofa space, which again is really nice. And then, I did mention it was a family-friendly car. Here in the center armrest, you get a big, wide cup holder here for baby bottles, and then a flat space here. That is good for those suction plates, you know, the cups and plates that babies have, so they don't tip over and fly around the car. That will suck onto there, so you can feed your baby in the back of the car. Really, really nice family thoughts there. Speaking of kids, we do of course have our ISOFIX mountings down here, which means that it's time to find out how easy it is to get a baby seat in the back of a Leapmotor C10. Okay, so the good thing here is the doors open really quite far, so a good 80 degrees. We've got a big open space here. This should be fairly easy, at least to get the baby seat into the back of the car. And now let's try and line it up with our ISOFIX mountings. There we go, clipped in there. Not bad at all. A little bit difficult to get to the mountains. They're not quite as easily accessible as on some other cars, but if you hold down the cord, this thing makes it a bit harder. Hold down the cord, it works pretty well. Then you can push the seat up against the backrest there. All good. You've got loads of space to spin your seat round as well. Great. Now in terms of the driving experience, there's a few key things to point out here. It's not the fastest car in the world, but it doesn't need to be. It's a family car. Whether you get the extended range version or the full EV, it will get you to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.2 to 7.6 seconds, depending on which drivetrain you've got. So it's fairly breezy, fairly quick. In terms of size, by the way, it's worth pointing out, this is pretty comparable to a GLC or an Xpeng G6. It's a bit bigger than a Qashqai and a Honda CR-V, just to give you some context around that. Now, a few quirks about the driving experience. The ride quality for the vast majority of roads where this car is going to be, absolutely fine. Does err a little bit on the side of being a bit harder, and then the suspension softens up afterwards. So probably hard suspension, soft dampers, I would say, to give you that kind of cushioned ride. You do feel, you know, joins in bridges and grids and things like that, but it's not too bad. It's actually fairly comfortable, especially for a car of this price point. One of the cool tricks up the sleeve of this car is the steering. It's very maneuverable. It's got a really tight turning circle. Leapmotor don't even make a big deal about this, but it's got a really tight turning circle, certainly better than pretty much all the cars I've driven recently, which makes it really maneuverable in tight parking spaces, in car parks, in streets full of cars, things like that. It's really good. You know where the front is going. It's going to give you nice sharp turns. So I like that, and the steering is super light, which makes it really easy to park. So light, in fact, that you can almost just swing it around when the car's not moving, and it will just kind of spin around almost the whole way. That's how light it is. The braking is interesting because, a bit like some French cars, it's a bit bitey at the top, and then it's a bit squidgy right at the bottom. And I think that's because we've got comfortable braking on. The intention of that is so that when you stop, you don't get this kind of rocking. You don't have to be quite so precise with your braking to kind of lift off at the end and make sure the car doesn't rock. The car with the comfortable braking will do a lot of that for you, which again is quite a nice feature. And in terms of overall ambience, I mean, it's quite quiet in here. Obviously it's an EV. We have an engine in ours, a 1.5 litre engine, which charges the battery and then powers the motor on the rear axle. You can hear it now because we're going uphill and our battery power is fairly low, so it does need to charge the battery. It's not super loud though, it's kind of like a vibration in the background. They've done a good job insulating noise on the outside. Harsh concrete roads, you will get a bit of road noise coming into the cabin, but again, for a car of this price, not that bad at all. In terms of drivetrains, there's only one. Everybody, no matter what you get, is a 170 kilowatt, 320 Newton meter of torque motor on the rear axle. And as I said, it's perky enough. It's not super quick, but it's fine. It's comfortable. No dual motor options on this car. Now, I could tell you about this one. We get a 28.4 kilowatt hour battery. and the engine there, it should do up to 1,190 kilometers of range on CLTC, 1,020 on WLTC, and 210 of those should be electric only on CLTC, 440 on WLTC. That's not really relevant to you because you're abroad. You're going to be driving the full electric version. That one comes with a set of 2 batteries. There's a 52.9 kilowatt hour battery that should get you 410 kilometers of range on CLTC, and a 69.9 kilowatt hour battery that will get you 550 kilometers of range on CLTC. I can tell you, after driving it for the last 2 days, I've driven it for over 200 kilometers downtown, the highway, elevated highways, up and around the country roads here in the mountains, and we're getting 95% plus of the WLTC figure, which is pretty good. So if you get the WLTC figure in Europe, you can take it as a good sign that that's pretty much what you're going to get. And bear in mind, we did stop around a little bit, have the aircon on while we were filming inside the car. So, you know, that number could actually be even higher. So the WLTC figure, pretty accurate so far on this. Now, we do have some autonomous functions, as I mentioned, only highways and elevated city highways, which you don't really have so much in Europe. That LiDAR enables us to have those. It will do automatic lane changes and automatic overtakes and things like that. Not sure if you're going to get that in Europe. I'll have to check the picture of the C10s that are currently being shipped to Europe to see if you do. No urban autonomous driving on this. All cars get adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, EBD, and the main stuff that you normally get, forward collision warning and things like that. There are a few things you don't get on the base version of the car. In terms of prices, this is where it gets quite interesting, and I'll caveat, these are Chinese prices only. What they're going to be in Europe, I have no idea. I think they'll be cheaper than the Xpeng G6, sorry. They'll be cheaper than the G6 because this is a cheaper car. Here in China, it starts at 128,800 RMB, about 14,000 pounds, about 16,000 euros, $18,000, something like that. And the flagship version starts at 168,800 RMB, which is about 18,000 pounds, probably about 20,000, 21,000 euros, something like that. So it's very affordable here in China. It should be pretty decent in Europe as well. It'll probably cost, as I said, less than a G6, more than an MG ZS, I would say. And I mean, that's going to make it quite competitive. You're getting a very good car, a very comfortable car with a good drivetrain, not the largest batteries in the world, but certainly enough for most people. If you're looking to go to EV on a budget, this car is certainly going to be well worth looking at by the time it comes to Europe. I personally, by the way, would recommend going for the mid-range to high-range models. The lower range models, I think you just miss out on a few too many things. The panoramic roof, you don't get the 8295 chip on the system, so it's probably better to upgrade to the more expensive model. That would be my recommendation for you if you buy this car in Europe or in another country like Australia or India, for example. So that's it for our review of the Leapmotor C10, a car that, at least to my eyes, is not that interesting to look at on the outside or even on the inside, but a car that is nevertheless very, very competent. It's got an absolutely enormous interior. It's very, very comfortable. It's got a lot of family-friendly features in there and a very good operating system as well. It's got a decent spec list, and especially for the price, you're getting a lot of car for your money. This car, if it comes to Europe at a very good price, could be a game changer for people looking to get into EV who maybe couldn't afford to get there before, but need a car that has space for the family. And once they get inside, I think they'll realize just how big and comfortable it is. Thank you very much for watching. If you do, thank you for subscribing. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up so more people can see the great cars coming out of China to the rest of the world. And as ever, we'll catch you next time.